Sophia Blake could feel the weight of every eye on her as she stumbled to the shooting drill again, her rifle slipping in her hands as if it belonged to someone else. The range echoed with the sharp cracks of gunfire from the other recruits, their bullets striking clean and precise. Her own shots scattered wide, nowhere near the mark, like broken promises lost in the air. For 3 relentless weeks, this had been her story. Missed targets, failed drills, stumbling footsteps that seemed to draw frustration from every instructor in earshot. Others were improving, their movements sharp and synchronized, but Sophia was caught in a cycle of blunders that grew heavier with every sunrise. Her drill sergeant, Michael Hayes, had run out of patience. He watched her with the cold stare of a man who had seen hundreds succeed and hundreds fail. Some left as warriors. Others went home with dignity. But Sophia, she seemed destined for neither. Blake, Hayes' voice lashed out across the training ground like a whip. Front and center. Sophia jogged forward, her boots pounding against the dirt. Sweat had already soaked through her uniform, though the morning had barely begun. The rifle felt foreign in her grip, an unwanted weight. She halted before him, snapping to attention, though her posture betrayed her unease. Hayes studied her like she was an unsolvable riddle. Explain to me, Blake, how someone graduates school with honors, yet can't field strip an M16 without turning it into scrap metal. No excuse, sir, she replied, her voice steady though her insides churned. No excuse is right. You failed weapons qualification 3 times. You couldn't hit a barn door at 10 feet. Your fitness scores are under the minimum. Your tactical knowledge is non-existent. Tell me, why are you here? Sophia's throat tightened. The truth was she didn't know anymore. 3 weeks ago, she had walked into the gates of the training depot certain that she was destined to wear the uniform with pride. She had scored high on the entrance exams, impressed her recruiter, and believed she was answering a calling larger than herself. Now she was the platoon joke, the one others whispered about at night, the one slowing the unit down. I want to serve my country, sir, she forced out, her words hollow even to her own ears. Hayes leaned in, his eyes burning with contempt. Wanting doesn't put a weapon in your hands. Competence does. And you, Blake, are showing none. The rest of the morning blurred into failure. On the range, her bullets scattered like confetti. Her stance wobbled. Her breathing came shallow. Her hands shook as if she had never fired before. When noon arrived, Hayes had seen enough. Blake, he barked. Report to the office after chow. Bring your gear. The words dropped like a stone in her stomach. Every recruit knew what that meant. She was being processed out, labeled a failure, and sent home with a mark that would follow her forever. At the chow hall, she sat alone, staring at food she couldn't taste. What would she tell her family? Her father, a decorated veteran who had spent years hiding his disappointment that none of his children followed his path. Her mother, who had cried proud tears when Sophia enlisted. Her younger brother, who had looked at her differently for the first time when she announced she would become a Marine. Now she would return as proof that dreams were fragile and willpower wasn't enough. Blake, the voice was unfamiliar. Sophia looked up to see a man approaching. His uniform bore no rank insignia, but the way he carried himself radiated authority far beyond anything she had seen here. His eyes were calm, watchful, as though he saw more than he revealed. You're Blake, he asked. Yes, sir, she answered cautiously. I'm Commander Robert Hale. You'll come with me. Her first instinct was confusion. No one here had mentioned a commander by that name, and yet the hall seemed to fall silent, as if the other recruits knew not to interfere. She rose slowly, following him out into the sunlight, uncertain if this was another humiliation or the beginning of something stranger. Robert led her past buildings she had never entered, through checkpoints where security personnel stepped aside without question, and finally into an office that looked more like a scholar's study than anything military. Stacks of files, scattered photographs, and maps covered the desk. Sit, Robert ordered. I prefer to stand, sir. That wasn't a request. She obeyed, her hands tightening on her knees. For a long moment, Robert studied her with the kind of silence that stripped away any pretense. Then he spoke. Tell me about yourself. My background is in my file, sir. Sophia replied carefully. "I've read the file. I want to hear it from you." So she recited the familiar facts: small-town upbringing, honor roll student, high school athletics, summers spent working at her uncle's security company. But when she reached that part, Robert interrupted. "Your uncle's company," he said. "He claims you spent most of your time at the shooting range." Sophia's stomach dropped. She had indeed spent hours there, but it had been personal, not official. "Yes, sir. I enjoyed target shooting in my free time." Robert's eyes narrowed as he opened a folder. "Your uncle says you're the most naturally gifted shooter he's ever seen. Regional competitions, state championships. You were 17 when you outshot professionals with decades of experience. And yet here, you can't hit a target at 10 feet. That's not failure, Blake. That's deliberate." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Sophia's breath caught. He knew. And in that moment, she realized her story at this camp wasn't ending. It was only beginning. Sophia Blake had been cornered before, but never like this. Commander Robert Hale's words clung to her like a shadow she couldn't shake. "You're not failing. You're pretending to fail." The accusation was more terrifying than any insult Sergeant Hayes had ever hurled at her. She had thought her secret was buried. 3 weeks of missed shots, clumsy stances, and trembling hands, all carefully staged so no one would see what she was truly capable of. And now this stranger, with his calm voice and unreadable eyes, had dragged it into the light. Her heart pounded. "Why would I deliberately fail, sir?" "That's what I intend to find out." Robert leaned back in his chair, sliding a thick folder across the desk. Its red markings suggested a level of classification Sophia had only glimpsed in movies. Photographs spilled across the surface, blurred images of landscapes, weapon schematics, tactical reports written in a language she couldn't understand. "You're scared," Robert said evenly, "but not of failure. You're scared of what success would reveal." Sophia's chest tightened. She tried to steady her breathing, but the words struck too close. She remembered the first week on base, the drill exercises, the live-fire scenarios, the moment she realized she could dismantle a human life as easily as she hit a paper target. It wasn't the act itself that had shaken her. It was the cold, calm acceptance inside her when she realized she could do it without hesitation. "You're wrong," she muttered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Robert ignored the denial. He flipped another page in the folder, revealing competition records she hadn't seen in years. Regional Shooting Championship, first place. State Championship, 3 categories. Tactical Pistol, Precision Rifle, mixed events. 17 years old. Does that sound like someone who can't handle a basic qualification? Sophia swallowed hard. "Sir, I never wanted recognition. I shot because I love the challenge, the quiet focus of it. But when I came here, it wasn't targets anymore. It was lives. And I realized I was good at it. Too good." Robert studied her with a silence that seemed to press against her skin. "And that scared you?" "It didn't scare me that I could do it," Sophia admitted softly. "It scared me that it didn't bother me." The commander closed the folder. "That's not weakness, Blake. That's self-awareness. The kind most people lack. You're not broken. You're exactly what we've been looking for." He opened a drawer and withdrew a folded piece of paper sealed with red wax. The gesture felt ceremonial, almost archaic, yet its weight was undeniable. He slid it across the desk toward her. Sophia hesitated before picking it up. The wax cracked under her thumb as she unfolded the sheet. Her eyes scanned the words, and for a moment she forgot to breathe. Classified orders. Private Sophia Blake. Immediate reassignment. Building 7, Tactical Range Charlie. Full combat gear. Live ammunition authorized. Duration indefinite. Authorization. Commander Robert Hale. Special Projects Division. Sophia looked up sharply. Special Projects Division? That doesn't exist. Correct, Robert said simply. Officially, it doesn't. The work we do here never appears in any record. The people who join us, officially, were never here. And the missions we complete, officially, never happened. Her pulse raced. And if I refuse? Robert's gaze hardened. Then tomorrow you go home with a discharge notice stamped failure. You spend the rest of your life wondering if you walked away from the only thing you were truly built to do. The air seemed to thicken. Sophia thought of her father's disappointed stare, her mother's pride, her brother's faith. She thought of the hours on the range back home, when the rifle felt like an extension of her breath, when the world narrowed to focus and timing and calm precision. She thought of how easily she had buried that part of herself the moment she realized what it meant. Her voice came out in a whisper. "Sir, will this training prepare me for combat?" Robert's lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Blake, this training will prepare you for things that make combat look like a warm-up exercise. You'll learn to do what most soldiers can't imagine, in places that don't officially exist. And when it's over, you'll carry a burden heavier than any medal. The kind of work that saves lives by ensuring the fight never begins." Sophia stared at the paper again. The ink seemed to pulse with possibility, a door opening into a future she had never imagined. She wasn't ready. She wasn't certain. But for the first time since stepping onto this base, she wasn't afraid. Her hands no longer shook as she folded the orders and tucked them into her pocket. She stood, straightening her shoulders, her decision silent but final. Robert rose as well, extending his hand. "Welcome to Special Projects, Blake. You report to Range Charlie in 1 hour. Full combat gear. Don't keep them waiting." Sophia shook his hand. His grip was firm, the calluses of someone who had lived through the training he now offered. "One question, sir," she asked. "How long have you been watching me?" Robert's eyes glinted with something almost like amusement. "Since the day you enlisted. Your competition scores flagged our system. We just needed to know if your mind matched your skill. And today, you answered that question." He walked her to the door, but paused before letting her leave. His voice lowered, carrying a weight that pressed into her bones. "Sophia, stop trying to be less than you are. Your country needs you at your full measure. Don't make the mistake of hiding again." The words echoed in her ears as she stepped outside, the paper burning like fire in her pocket. The sun was sinking low, painting the training grounds in shades of gold and shadow. She looked toward the barracks, where failure awaited, and toward the distant buildings, where her new orders called. For the first time, she knew which path she would choose. The door to tactical range Charlie looked plain enough, a slab of reinforced steel with no markings, no guards, and no sign that anything unusual lay inside. Yet as Sophia Blake stood before it, her pulse hammered harder than it ever had during any inspection. The paper in her pocket, those orders that should not exist, felt like a brand against her skin. She inhaled sharply, adjusted the weight of her combat gear, and pushed the door open. The world inside was nothing like she expected. Instead of the narrow, dusty ranges of boot camp, she stepped into a facility that stretched farther than her eyes could follow. Rows of precision targets extended out to impossible distances, some marked at over 1,000 meters. Sophisticated screens blinked with real-time data. Weapons lined tables like exhibits in a museum of war. Rifles she had only read about. Optics she had never touched. Ammunition she didn't recognize. "Blake," a voice called. She turned to see a tall woman striding toward her. Athletic, sharp-eyed, and carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had been through the fire and come out unburned. Her uniform bore no rank, but the authority in her tone made rank unnecessary. "I'm Emma Torres," the woman said. "Your primary instructor." Sophia snapped to attention instinctively. "Ma'am, should I?" Emma waved it off. "Relax. This isn't boot camp. Here, you'll be judged on results, not posture." Sophia nodded cautiously. Emma studied her for a moment, then gestured toward the weapons table. "Commander Hale tells me you've been hiding your true abilities. Today, we find out if he's right." Sophia's throat tightened. She followed Emma to the table, her eyes sweeping over the instruments of precision that gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Each weapon seemed to whisper to her, calling her back to the comfort she had abandoned weeks ago. Emma handed her a rifle. "Let's see what you can do. Targets at 500 meters. Take your time." Sophia dropped into position, the rifle settling into her arms like an old friend she hadn't seen in years. Her breathing slowed. Her mind sharpened. The chaos of training camp fell away. For the first time since she had arrived on this base, she was herself again. The first shot cracked across the range. The round struck dead center. The second shot followed, then the third, each punching into the same spot until the paper target tore into shreds. Emma's expression didn't change, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of satisfaction. Not bad. Let's raise the stakes. The next hour was a storm of challenges. Targets moved, vanished, reappeared at impossible angles. Simulations ran scenarios where Sophia had to fire under time pressure, under simulated chaos, while moving through obstacles and suppressing distractions. She didn't miss. Her body moved without hesitation, her focus slicing through the noise with surgical clarity. But it wasn't just about accuracy. Emma crafted tests designed to stretch her mind as much as her aim. A hostage rescue drill forced Sophia to distinguish friend from foe in fractions of a second. Civilians appeared in unpredictable places, blurring the decision line between acceptable and catastrophic. Sophia's pulse raced, sweat streaming down her face, but her decisions came sharp, unyielding. Each shot found its rightful place. Each hesitation was brief but purposeful. When the final simulation ended, the range fell silent. Sophia lowered her rifle, her breath ragged, her hands trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of what she had just done. Emma walked over, her eyes steady. Outstanding. Hale was right. Sophia blinked, uncertain if she had heard correctly. Ma'am. Emma crossed her arms. You've been wasting your time in boot camp. Out there, they train recruits to survive combat. In here, we train operators to end wars before they start. The words settled over Sophia like a shroud. She felt the weight of them in her chest. This was bigger than shooting, bigger than passing or failing. Emma's voice softened, though it carried an edge of gravity. What you did today is raw talent. From now on, our job is to shape it, to make you precise, to turn that instinct into something that can save lives while never leaving a trace. Sophia swallowed hard, staring at the weapon still in her hands. She had feared this moment, the moment she would stop pretending and see what she truly was. Yet here, under Emma's watch, it didn't feel like damnation. It felt like purpose. Ma'am, she asked quietly, how many people know about this program? Emma's gaze flickered, a mix of pride and sorrow. As few as possible. The work we do doesn't belong in history books. The best missions are the ones no one ever knows happened. The greatest victories are the ones where the battle never begins. Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. The truth was stark, but it carried a strange clarity. Emma rested a hand on her shoulder, firm but not unkind. Get some rest. Tomorrow, the real training begins. And Blake, stop hiding. The time for that is over. As Sophia cleaned the rifle with meticulous care, she realized something had shifted. 3 weeks ago, she had been drowning in failure. Now, she stood at the threshold of something far more dangerous and far more meaningful. For the first time, she wasn't running from her gift. She was embracing it. Sleep had barely touched Sophia Blake when the alarm sounded. Not the base alarms of boot camp drills, but a sharp, piercing tone that rattled her new quarters like an executioner's drum. She snapped upright, instinct already propelling her into gear. The clock read 0400 hours. When she stepped into the corridor, Emma Torres was waiting. No words of greeting, no smile, only a curt nod. Welcome to real training. Follow. Sophia fell in step, her boots striking rhythm against the sterile floor. Her stomach churned with anticipation. Yesterday she had proved her hidden skill. Today, she would learn its cost. Emma led her into a chamber unlike anything she had ever seen. The walls shimmered with screens projecting shifting environments, city streets, desert outposts, crowded markets. Speakers pumped in the roar of gunfire, shouts in multiple languages, the chaos of combat. The smell of smoke and dust clung to the air. Rule 1, Emma said, voice cutting through the noise. Accuracy isn't enough. Anyone can pull a trigger. What matters is judgment under fire. She snapped her fingers. Instantly, a simulation unfolded, a hostage scenario inside a crumbling apartment block. Figures moved across the holographic landscape, some armed, some terrified civilians, some wearing disguises that blurred the line between threat and bystander. Identify. Decide. Act, Emma ordered. Sophia's rifle came up. The old instincts flared, but hesitation gripped her chest. She had always shot at paper targets, clean silhouettes that offered no moral ambiguity. Here, one mistake could mean striking down an innocent projection, a reminder that in reality, hesitation or error cost lives. She exhaled slowly, forcing her mind into clarity. The first hostile fell. Then another. A child darted across her sight line, and she pulled her shot at the last fraction of a second. Her heart thundered. She had chosen restraint. Emma's voice rang out. Good. Restraint is as vital as precision. An operator who can't distinguish between target and collateral is nothing more than an assassin. The drill escalated. Scenarios shifted without warning, marketplaces turning into ambush sites, rooftops exploding with enemy fire, civilians collapsing into the path of combatants. Sweat poured down Sophia's face, but each decision grew sharper, her movements more decisive. She was learning not just to shoot, but to think in chaos, to thread the impossible line between lethal precision and moral clarity. Hours blurred. Her arms ached. Her vision swam. But she refused to falter. Finally, Emma called an end. The chamber faded into silence. Sophia collapsed to one knee, chest heaving, the weight of her choices pressing heavier than her gear. Emma crouched beside her. This is only the beginning. What we do here isn't about glory. It's about making impossible choices under impossible pressure. Do you understand? Sophia looked up, her voice hoarse but steady. Yes, ma'am. Emma's gaze lingered on her, softened for just a moment. Then we'll see how far you can go. The days that followed stripped Sophia down to the core of who she was. She endured physical trials designed to break even the strongest, forced marches through simulated terrain, obstacle courses under live fire, drowning drills in freezing water. Her body screamed, but she refused to yield. She was pushed into psychological tests as well. In one exercise, interrogators grilled her for hours, hammering her with questions meant to crack her cover story. Each time she slipped, they exploited it ruthlessly. By the third attempt, she could lie so smoothly she believed her own words. In another, she was placed in isolation for days, denied time, light, or comfort. Her mind clawed at itself, but she learned to breathe, to anchor her thoughts in small rituals, counting her breaths, reciting memories, gripping the chain of her dog tags until the metal dug into her skin. Then came medical training. Sophia found herself elbow-deep in simulations of battlefield wounds, her hands slick with synthetic blood as she stitched, clamped, and improvised life-saving techniques. Emma watched every motion. A bullet neutralizes one threat, she told her. A bandage can save 10 lives. Learn both. The program left no part of her untouched. In language immersion labs, she stumbled through phrases until they rolled from her tongue with native rhythm. In cultural simulations, she learned to blend seamlessly, to become invisible in plain sight. And in the technology wing, she discovered tools of surveillance and counter-surveillance so advanced they felt like science fiction. Through it all, Emma's presence was constant, unyielding, demanding, yet strangely protective. One evening, after a grueling session, Sophia dared to ask, "Why train us like this? Why push us beyond soldiers into something else?" Emma studied her with that same measured calm. Because the world doesn't need more soldiers. It needs shadows. Wars are loud, obvious. Our job is silence. We prevent battles before they happen. We neutralize threats so that thousands never die. And we do it without recognition, without history books, without thanks. Sophia let the words settle. Silence instead of glory. Prevention instead of conquest. It was a mission she hadn't imagined, but one that stirred something deep in her chest. As she drifted to sleep that night, exhausted yet restless, Sophia realized she was changing. Not into a killer, not into a machine, but into something more complicated. Someone who could hold both precision and restraint, strength and conscience. The shadows were teaching her more than skill. They were teaching her who she truly was. Sophia Blake lay flat on the cold concrete floor, the barrel of her rifle steady against her cheek. Through the scope, she could see the outline of a target moving in the distance, too fast, too erratic for any ordinary shooter. Her breathing slowed until it matched the rhythm she had practiced 1,000 times. One heartbeat, too. The world narrowed. The shot rang out. The target collapsed. Again. Emma Torres ordered from behind her. Sophia reloaded without hesitation. The next target appeared, then another, a blur of movement across the range. Her fingers moved with instinct, her mind calculating distance, wind, timing, all in fractions of a second. Each shot found its mark. When the drill ended, Sophia rose to her knees, wiping sweat from her brow. Her muscles trembled with fatigue, but beneath it lay something stronger, certainty. She was no longer pretending to fail. She was no longer hiding. Emma approached, her face unreadable. "Do you feel it?" Sophia frowned. "Feel what?" "The moment when your skill stops being just yours, when it becomes a responsibility." Sophia glanced back at the range. Every target lay silent, proof of her precision. Yet Emma's words dug deeper. This wasn't about perfect aim. It was about what that aim meant, what it could save, and what it could destroy. The following week tested her in ways she had never imagined. One exercise placed her in a simulated city filled with shifting scenarios. At first, it was simple. Neutralize hostiles, protect civilians. But as the hours stretched on, the simulation blurred truth and deception. Civilians became shields for enemies. Enemies disguised themselves as allies. Every choice carried the weight of unseen consequences. By the end, Sophia had neutralized the threats without losing a single civilian. But she was shaking, not from failure, but from the realization of how thin the line truly was. Emma met her outside the chamber. "That's why this program exists. To create people who can walk that line without falling off it." Another test forced her into a moral trap. She was given 2 hostages, both wired with explosives. She had seconds to choose whom to save. Her instinct screamed one thing, her logic another. At the final moment, she found a third way, shooting the detonator itself, breaking the rules of the simulation but saving both. The instructors exchanged glances. Emma only smiled faintly. Never accept the limits they give you. That's the difference between an operator and a pawn. Late one evening, Sophia sat alone in her quarters, staring at the reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back was no longer the trembling recruit who had nearly washed out of boot camp. Her shoulders carried strength now, her eyes sharper, her movements sure. Yet beneath the steel, she still carried the same question, the one that had haunted her since Robert Hale first handed her those orders. Who am I becoming? The answer came the next morning. Robert summoned her to his office, the same one where her new life had begun. The folder still lay on his desk, thicker now, filled with records of her training. He flipped it closed and met her eyes. "You've proven yourself," he said. "Not just in skill, but in judgment. You're ready." Sophia swallowed. "Ready for what, sir?" He leaned forward. "For missions that don't exist. For victories no one will celebrate. For choices that will haunt you, but also save thousands who will never know your name." His words struck her with the weight of inevitability. She understood now. This wasn't about medals or recognition. It wasn't even about combat. It was about becoming the unseen barrier between peace and chaos. Robert stood and extended his hand once more. "Sophia, your failures brought you here. But they weren't failures at all. They were the doorway to the truth of who you are. You're not meant to be another soldier. You're meant to be a guardian in the shadows." Her hand met his, steady and unafraid. "Yes, sir." The next day, she stood at the edge of the facility's outer grounds, her gear packed, her rifle slung across her back. A transport vehicle waited to take her to her first assignment, somewhere unmarked, unnamed, unseen. Emma joined her, arms crossed, a rare softness in her eyes. "One last thing," she said. "You'll never get recognition. You'll never see your name in any history book. But you'll sleep at night knowing entire wars never happened because of what you did." Sophia nodded. "That's enough." Emma smirked. "Good, because it's all you'll ever get." As the vehicle's engine roared to life, Sophia climbed aboard. She didn't look back. The facility would remain hidden, just as she would. She understood now that her fear had never been weakness. It had been foresight, preparing her for a life where power had to be balanced by conscience. She wasn't a failed recruit. She wasn't a mistake. She was exactly where she was meant to be. The transport rolled forward, carrying her into the unknown. The horizon stretched wide, painted in fading gold. For the first time, Sophia wasn't afraid of what came next. In the silence of that moment, she found her victory. Not in applause, not in glory, but in knowing she had become the kind of warrior who could keep the world from burning without ever firing a celebrated shot. She had become the shadow that made the light possible,